When you catch up with your friends, you want to see where they're at in life. You're happy for them, what they're doing. You're also critical of them, where you're saying like, look, I think you could do this or that better. And then I expect the same reciprocity from them. I want them to be like, oh, look, here's what I'm doing. I hope you'll check out my work, read this thing I wrote. A lot of it coming back to Bitcoin lately. So I guess there's some implicit seeking of admiration or approval there, where you're just trying to be the best you can be, and then you want your peers to appreciate what you're doing. I don't ever want to cross that line where I'm orienting myself and my actions towards trying to fulfill someone's specific criteria. This is a double-edged sword, by the way, because this makes you very entrepreneurial. It's like you're trying to do your own thing all the time, but it also makes you damn near unemployable, as I've joked before.
Today I'm sitting with Robert Breedlove. Robert is a Bitcoin-focused entrepreneur, author, podcaster, and philosopher. Robert calls himself a Freedom Maximalist and believes he has found his life's passion and work in Bitcoin as a contributor to the separation of money and state. Today we discuss Robert's early years, what and who motivated him early on, and how he found his calling in Bitcoin. Robert is the CEO and the CIO of Parallax Digital. Previously, Robert held executive roles at several privately held technology companies. I will say I really enjoyed my conversation with Robert today because I got to learn more about Robert himself and his background. I've learned a lot from Robert's writings and his podcasts, and he's a very thoughtful and strategic philosopher on money and Bitcoin, and he takes complex problems and simplifies them for the average listener. I believe Robert has helped a lot of people understand the true value of Bitcoin. I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation today. So with that said, let's dive in with Robert Breedlove. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you like and comment below. And to find future episodes in your feed and push notifications, make sure you subscribe. And if you click the little bell, you'll get every new episode as it's released. Thanks again for watching. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey Jay, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So I start off the show. The first question I ask everybody is, who's in your top five, the five people that you surround yourself with the most professionally these days? I'm just trying to understand who the average of those people are and who's influencing you these days.
Yeah, that's a good question. And as I was saying offline, the physical surroundings have been quite different over the past 18 months. I'm mostly in front of the computer, engaged in this digital reality. Who I'm physically surrounded with is pretty much just my family mostly. But in terms of like professional, intellectual thought space, I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do, which is doing the What is Money show. So I'm having these long form conversations with quite literally the smartest people I can find. And for me, it's something I would be doing regardless. So I've managed to kind of pull off that magic trick of turning your passion into your paycheck in a way. My friends have always made fun of me saying that I love homework. So now I just get to do homework all day and talk to people about big ideas. So I'm really, really happy about that. Some people I'm recording with right now. So I'm recording with Jeff Snyder. He's a very brilliant thinker in terms of macroeconomics, but specifically central banking and how much it's changed throughout history and the impact it's had on markets. Been talking to Michael Saylor a lot. The Saylor series has been very popular. So cool. That was the series that launched our show. So his engineering and energetic frame of reference on money and socioeconomic reality has been very influential on me. I've been talking to Eric Weinstein lately, and he has quite an interesting take on, he's looking at the world through kind of a gauge theoretic framework, which is something very heavily mathematical, but our conversations have been very eye-opening. He has me questioning my own, belief in the free market's ability to solve everything. We're exploring this concept of market failures, which has been interesting. I've been talking to Balaji. Balaji's another just unbelievable genius. He knows so much about so many different domains. I spoke with John Vervaeke recently. So we spent about 12 hours together. He's a cognitive scientist, opening my eyes to the cognitive science aspects of money. I talked to Max Hillebrand. He's a libertarian philosopher. I probably already named more than five, but it's these chunks of time I'm spending recording long form series with people that I really consider who I'm surrounding myself with right now, even though it's on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. We're not on Zoom, but it's basically the same thing. And everybody that I'm
Yeah.
doing all my interviews with, it's all remote, no sit downs. I mean, I heard Peter's actually going in person again. So Peter McCormick's starting to do them in person again.
I'm totally game to do them in person, but it's just so much more convenient right now with Zoom and everyone's.
Why travel and bring all the equipment? And it's just this is perfectly fine. I mean, it's ideas, right? So I want to go back to your early years, your childhood, if you could. Where did you grow up? Tell us your socioeconomic background, what your parents kind of did for a living, and your siblings and stuff.
Yeah, so I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Before the age of 8, though, we moved around a lot. So my father owned and operated a number of businesses. He was pretty big in the logistics, but he was an accountant by trade and training as well. So I guess I kind of inherited that gene or whatever. My mom was entrepreneurial as well. So she like owned and operated bars and restaurants. And so before the age of 8, we moved around a lot. And then by the age of 8, we're pretty much settled in Chattanooga. And I was there for all the way through until college. Socioeconomically, I would say when I was very young, we were very high up the hierarchy. And then we had some hard times in the middle.
What happened?
Well, my mother and father separated, and he was, very successful in what he was doing, but their separation just created a lot of friction. And, my mom was kind of like doing things on her own. So that was a, pretty distinct change in life. And, but she reinforced the importance of education to me at all times. It was always whatever problem we faced or whatever situation in life that, I didn't like, she would recommend very strongly that the path forward was education. Like you can adapt to your reality in a way that you can make it better than it was. So I'm very grateful that she kind of indoctrinated me that way. Encouraged me to always be self-sufficient and just figure things out on my own. I think beating into my head the power of reading, like you can, she would always say, it's not what you know, it's if you can look it up. So I've always just thought, and this is, way pre-Google. So
there's no looking at it. It was a library.
Yeah, I've always kind of operated with that paradigm, I guess, embedded. And I grew up in Chattanooga, had a very adventurous childhood. We're outdoors a lot, but we also played video games a lot as well. So there's kind of this indoor-outdoor heavy mix. And went to college, University of Tennessee.
Did you play sports when you were a kid?
Yeah, so I started playing football in middle school.
Let me guess, were you a tight end?
You know what? I have terrible hands, actually. I don't know what it is. I can do a lot of things with a football, but I can't catch it. It's just.
What did you play?
I was a really good linebacker, middle linebacker, actually. But I only played when I was younger, and then I did wrestling for a while. Okay. And then the main sport I got into was Olympic style weightlifting. So I started doing competitive, this was an unknown sport basically before CrossFit. But if you've ever seen CrossFit, they do these explosive overhead lifts called the snatch and the clean and jerk.
Stuff.
Yeah, that's what we did competitively. So that was my jam from basically 13 to 17.
Okay.
And then from there, I kind of just worked out as a hobbyist, sort of into bodybuilding a little bit, but also into doing a number of other things. And then I got into boxing when I was 20. So from 20 to 22, I was a boxer. But yeah, sport, especially with Olympic weightlifting, I had a really good coach who was almost like a second father to me in a way. And he just was so scientific in his approach to the sport, the way we trained, the instilling us with a principle of work ethic and visualization, like setting a goal and then you're actually closing the gap between where you currently are and where you want to be. And over very long time intervals, we'd be preparing for a competition 8-12 months in advance, thinking about it every day, going through thousands of movements, technique. Yeah. So I think all of that was really useful for me.
I played football. So we had a high school football coach who was an assistant. I was a college coach previously. So he brought his college weightlifting regimes to us. And in my sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, he had everybody do a three rep max, which as you know, you could just figure out what your 1 rep is from there, right? And I'm a young kid at the time, right? Because I lifted in middle school and stuff on my own. I would go to like Lou Ferrigno's gym in our local town, right? And so we all felt we knew what we were doing, right? This guy comes in and he does this 3 rep thing. And I'm like, how's he going to know what the 1 rep is? It made no sense, to me. Yeah. And then he explained, there's like a chart and you could see it. And he's like, your body is science. It's just math. This is how he explained it to me. He's like, people don't realize that there was an element that at the end of the summer, because we had a program, right? So based on that, he looked at what your 3 rep to your one rep equivalent was. And then from there, he looked at that and he says, if you follow this program that he designed for you, he's like, at the end of the summer, you're going to hit X, whatever it was, right? So you have Y to X. Yep. And I think it was like 200 pounds at 230 or something like that, on the bench, I'm just saying for a second. And, I didn't believe it. I'm looking at this guy like he's a crackpot. There's no way I'm going to gain that much strength, right? And he's like, you'll probably even do better because you're not lifting properly, your technique to your point, all this kind of stuff. He's like, he was right. I ended up getting like 265 on flat bench that summer. At the end of the summer, I was like, it just taught me that you got to have a plan. You got to stick to that plan, right? It was like one of the most profound things that an early young adolescent, seeing that, with the science of it, and just understanding what you put in is what you get out. And it wasn't just the lifting. It was like, he told me, he's like, you got to come here every day. You got to do the lifts, Monday through Friday. Don't go out and drink. You got to eat properly and you got to get your sleep. He's like, so many people screw up the sleep and the eating thing, And in the end, that season, our football team went to the state finals and everything like that. And based off, I wasn't even a starter that year. I was like one of the guys sitting I was a sophomore and we had a stacked team. But it really was a huge, I hear you say that. It's like, I could tell you went through that too. The technique of the clean and jerk and all that stuff. It's like, so many people in this space don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
But it carries over to everything in entrepreneurship, right? You have to have a plan. You've got to stick to it. You've got to adjust. You've got to tweak. But the real power, I think, is just what you said, is because he did something very similar. He tested us, our abilities, and then laid out a program for us. So to see that the results of a program like that manifest is something that's extremely powerful. You can't learn that in a book, right? You need to experience that. And then once you have that principle, you can take that to other domains of your life.
Exactly. When I started my tech company, it was the same thing. And you pivot slightly in a business. With the workout, you really don't, right? You might slightly pivot if you're getting a little too far ahead of yourself, and you have to keep doing something for a week or two. The same program. Yeah. You might have to for whatever reason. Sometimes that happens. But no, it was profound for me. It really did carry over to the rest of my life. A lot of people don't understand.
Our pivots in the workout were he would give us an opportunity to break our max.
Right.
Mid-program. We'd have a 12-week program, but if we felt good one day, we could max out. And if we broke a new max, that would actually feed back into the program. Next week, you'd have different weights, different intensities. So,
what were you doing on bench, clean, and squat? What were those 3 core lifts?
My all-time best lifts, I'm really weak on bench, actually. So I was 265, body weight 265.
Okay.
It was my heaviest. I was 17 years old, which is crazy because now I'm 225. I'm lighter. But I was all, because we're doing Olympic lifting, I was all quads and butt basically.
Yeah.
I was and shoulders. My upper body was kind of just average. When I left Olympic lifting, the most I could bench was not even 315. It was maybe 295 or 305.
Yeah.
But when I was 17, I deadlifted 605.
Wow.
With no straps. I was just doing the over under. Yeah, I could clean and jerk 402. So it was 182 kilos. I snatched 147 kilos, which is 325 pounds, I think. And when I was 16 and under, these were American records. Those weren't American records. My American records were 275 snatch and 360 clean and jerk, I think.
Wow.
That was in the 230-pound weight class but the school age, so 16 and under. And then squat, I did a full squat with 545. So ass to the grass with 545. So I was really strong on deadlift and squat. And
your back and legs are strong. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggled with the jerk. I have really long arms.
That's why I was thinking this when you were talking. I'm thinking his bench is probably weak because of his height. A lot of most of the tall guys, when I played football, I'd come into camp. I did 225 33 times, and in that year, 38 was the record in the combine. And the coach was like, "Holy shit!" But I'm 5'10". I'm not 6'3" or 6'4". The tall guys, like the other linebackers, the linebacker, they're getting like 18, 17. I'm like, these guys are terrible. What's going on here? But it's the way you pinch your shoulders, and there's a lot of technique to it.
But then you get an advantage being tall on deadlift, though.
That's right.
If you have certain proportions, because you can get more angle or more leverage on the bar. But and then later, like when I got post weightlifting, got really into bodybuilding and fitness, I was actually trying to get my bench as high as I could.
Sure.
I think I got it to 355, but I weighed like 255.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a ton of weight. And now I don't even do bench anymore. I just do like dumbbell stuff.
Dumbbells, me too. Yeah.
And push-ups and dips.
Like, I'm not trying to impress anybody, right?
Yeah, but it used to be the big thing, in college and high school. You're like, how much do you bench?
What do you bench? Do you even lift, bro?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. I want to switch gears. I want to talk about let's talk about fatherhood rather. Tell us, if you could, maybe your relationship with your father. Interesting that he split with mom when you were in high school, I guess, when it happened, or middle school. Can you tell us about that? What kind of impact that had on you both professionally and personally? And I'm just trying to understand this. I want to know what you think the good key values to being a good father is. You said you're a father. I'm a father. This is a question just for my own personal interest.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So they actually split when I was 5, my mom and dad. And I had somewhat of a relationship with him for a few years after that. We moved pretty far away. We moved to Tennessee. He was in Florida. So we were like, 9-10 hours apart by car. And I don't know, the relationship just kind of broke down. I don't think he was making a lot of effort to visit with me. And then my mom, she also started dating someone else who would become basically my stepdad. They never got married, but they were together pretty much my whole life. And so I don't know what I don't know, like I don't know what I missed out on necessarily, but my stepfather provided me, I think, a lot of strong principles of fatherhood. Like he pushed me in sport. He pushed me in school. He used to, which was funny, he used to pay us $5 for every A we got. So like, if you get straight A's, you have, I don't know, $30 or whatever it was. I forget how many letters there were. And so he was always incentivizing us to study and then train at sport. And, incentives are powerful, man. Like it's when you're a kid and $30 is a ton of money. It really works. And he's also just, his name's Frank. He's one of the most socially genius humans I've ever met. Chattanooga is not a huge city. It's maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people today. So it's kind of like a big small town, but he ran kind of like this 3rd generation business. And, he just knew everybody, man. He knew everybody in town. He had this, still does. Like he's just got a great personality. Like if you had to grade people on personality, he's just like, he gets along with everyone. He's funny. He's cool. He's smart. He's smooth. He's suave. He's got just all these characteristics that, anyone would aspire to have. So I feel very fortunate to have grown up with him. And he was very into sports and whatnot. So that kind of reinforced my own career. Like he supported my Olympic weightlifting and, really pushed me to excel at that. So all of that was really important to me. And then, I have a little girl. She's almost 3 years old. And what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to create a life that is as free and abundant for her so that she can choose her own pathway forward. I'm not trying to indoctrinate her or push her any specific direction, but I really do want to give her a very strong fundamental basis for dealing with the world. And the way I look at this is, we read together a lot. I plan on actually reading really hard things with her. She's only 3 right now, but starting the age of 5, the plan is from like 5 to 10. I want to read all the classics with her, all, Plato, Aristotle, all the classic philosophic texts, give her a really powerful mind to deal with critical thinking, to deal with language, and just in a way that I can hopefully equip her with some, wisdom at a young age so she can go out into this world, figure out what she wants to do. Kind of like what my mom gave me was just this ability to look at a scenario or situation and have a goal in mind and have a firm recognition and understanding of where you actually are in space and time, and then close the gap. Something like that. So I think with giving her this very fundamental understanding of language, of thought, of philosophy, frankly, right? Very firm philosophic anchorings into the world that she'll be resistant to self-deception, deception from others, dogma, propaganda. I just want to give her a very strong critical mind, and then just set her free. And then be like, you're free to follow your heart and values and see where it takes you.
I like that.
But I'm learning as I go. I have no idea what I'm doing. So.
Aren't we all? I just tweeted something out the other day. I was like, it took taking me 42 years to figure out that my parents were just growing up with me, and I'm sure when my kids are 42, they'll figure out I was doing it the same.
Yeah, yeah, we're all just grown-up children.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure it out. Did you or do you seek approval or affirmation from others? Thinking of like maybe your parents or now your daughter, your spouse. Like, is that something for you? Like.
I guess with my mom, I'm very fortunate that she's very supportive. She's always kind of like been number one fan kind of mom, I've always made friends with very competitive people. And maybe this is just an athlete thing too, where you're always like on a lot of different dimensions too, like physically, athletically, intellectually. I've always just gotten along with people that are competitive. I don't know why. I guess I'm competitive too. So just make birds of a feather thing. But I do seek, I don't know if it's an affirmation, but you just like when you catch up with your friends, you want to see where they're at in life.
Sure.
You're happy for them, what they're doing. You're also critical of them where you're saying like, look, I think you could do this or that better. And then I expect the same reciprocity from them. I want them to be like, oh, look, here's what I'm doing. I hope you'll check out my work, read this thing I wrote, whatever. A lot of it coming back to Bitcoin lately.
Sure.
Well, they're all into it now, so it's worked.
That's awesome.
I have spoken about it a lot, and then, received feedback from them on my writing, and then, done the same for them. So I guess there's some implicit seeking of admiration or approval there, where you're just trying to be the best you can be, and then you want your peers to appreciate what you're doing.
And challenge you. Yeah.
I don't ever want to cross that line where I'm orienting myself and my actions towards trying to fulfill someone's specific criteria.
Sure.
And this is a double-edged sword, by the way, because this makes you very entrepreneurial. It's like you're trying to do your own thing all the time, but it also makes you damn near unemployable, as I've joked before.
I always say that. I'm unemployable.
I've been in a number of roles, but I've always done better the more entrepreneurial my position, which is to say the more free range I have.
Yeah.
To take things. So, and now I'm, very fortunate. The past several years, I've been my own boss. And where I'm at currently, as I think I mentioned to you offline, this is my place. This is my life's work. I think educating people about Bitcoin, the nature of the monetary system, what I consider to be a less visible yet more pervasive form of slavery in the modern world. Gives me a lot of fulfillment to talk about that and educate people. The messages I get of people thanking me, for opening their eyes or see things differently, it's just damn near overwhelming, So
yeah, and that's kind of the key to that question, right? Like, not that you're doing it for them, but it clearly is a part of it, right? I mean, you're reaching people, and it's very fulfilling to see that you're reaching people.
I've joked before, but I don't know if it's a joke. People always say, what's the meaning of life? That's supposed to be like the big question. But I've always thought it was pretty simple. It's like people helping people.
Yeah.
Right? We are designed to cooperate with one another to some extent. So if you can find your niche, right? It's kind of that ikigai graph where what you're good at, what will pay you, what you enjoy, and you find the centerpiece of this Venn diagram. And I just feel very fortunate to have found that through my work in Bitcoin. But it takes time. I didn't come into this space knowing I would ever be a public facing educator of any sort. I actually thought the opposite. The vision I had for myself earlier on was this super private, independently wealthy, off the radar hedge fund guy.
Yeah.
But just by virtue of, being in Bitcoin and writing and talking and listening to the market, I've responded to that. And so I guess maybe the lesson there is you may have a certain vision for your life, but don't be reticent to adapt. We don't always know where life's taking us. It's kind of like that old saying, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. So you just got to be willing to call an audible and adapt.
It's funny you say that because I sold my company in 2015 and I went off the grid basically, but I was doing like bylines for Forbes magazine, Inc., Fast Company, all that crap, mostly just to get our name out there for the company. It was never personal for me, right? We sell the company and I fall off the radar. All these people keep hitting you up, like, can you write an article? I'm like, no, I'm good. There's no purpose for the article, right? Like I don't have any company to promote. Why am I doing that? Even though the articles have nothing to do with the company, as you probably imagine, right? And then on Twitter too, I just kind of like disappear, right? Then I go on Clubhouse and I meet American Hodl and Jason Williams and all these guys, and I'm in Bitcoin since 2016. So I'm sitting on this thing for a while, but I realized very quickly, I don't really understand Bitcoin. Like when I'm listening to these guys, I'm like, this is not how I viewed Bitcoin. And I started to view Bitcoin in an entirely different way, became more public about it after learning more. They're directing me to read certain books that I haven't heard of. I never even knew who Max Kaiser was until this year, but that tells you a lot, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to me, it was a trade. It was like any other asset, as if almost treat it like a stock, right? Kind of the way I viewed it. I didn't view it as a hedge on inflation and all this other stuff that we learn about now. And when I first was introduced to Bitcoin, we're going back to like 2013 or 2012. Fred Wilson, if you know who that is, he was a VC up in New York. He was writing about it on his blog, and I kept thinking,
Square, right?
Yeah, Union Square Ventures. And I'm saying to myself, well, this guy's this is going to be a whole ecosystem around this coin, and they're going to invest in that ecosystem. And I'm not going to participate there. So I don't know anything about this coin, but I know that they're going to make a lot of money, and I'm probably not if I buy the coin, is the way I thought of it. Wow, that was stupid in hindsight,
Well, a lot of people tripped over that one, man. There was this misconception that you could just picks and shovels all around Bitcoin, right? Don't invest in Bitcoin, but buy all the adjacent companies and equities and you'll do better. Marginally, to some extent, if you pick a few of the right plays like Coinbase and, Kraken, some of these other ones, you could actually do as good or maybe close to as good as Bitcoin over the same time frame. But the really obvious low risk strategy was just buy and hold forever. Well, in retrospect, I'm not saying it was obvious at the time by any stretch of the imagination.
I wish they made these compelling arguments back then.
Yeah, I got into Bitcoin in 14, but I just didn't even look into it at all. I just thought it was some speculative hype play.
Same here. Yeah.
And I've said this before, but the reason for me, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I actually think the name Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, they're both the word bit, you think of something, just a little bit, like it's a small thing, it doesn't matter, it's not a big deal. A coin is like a small denomination of money. I really think I wrote it off in my mind just based on its name. I didn't look into it. I didn't read the white paper. I didn't do anything.
Me either. Yep.
Which was a real kick in the butt for me because I had already learned before Bitcoin all of the issues with central banking.
Yeah.
I had been down the Creature from Jekyll Island rabbit hole and put all that together. But I didn't connect the dot that Bitcoin was the answer to this until like really going down the rabbit hole in 2017 is when I really started to wake up to it.
Yeah, same thing here though. It's funny, your experience is very similar. Kind of got into it as a trade almost, as like an investment. I did not think of it as this is going to be the new monetary system. Was not the way I was thinking about Bitcoin initially. I want to go back though. Let's talk more about you and your background. So let's go back to so most of the people up around the show, you're all high achievers, right? So high achievers are usually obsessive compulsive, and that's how they get to where they are and doing what they did. Were you obsessive compulsive about your craft? And if so, did it have any direct impact on personal relationships or anything like that?
I don't know if I'm obsessive compulsive per se, but I am a very intense person. I kind of joke that there's a Chuck Norris joke. Chuck Norris only has two speeds, walk and kill. I feel like I kind of have that a little bit where I just can either be completely chill and relaxing and like disconnecting from work entirely. Otherwise, I'm like a laser beam. Mm-hmm. I'm working like just crazy amounts of work and focus. But that it bleeds over a little bit. So when I'm in that work mode and I'm super intense and I'm super devoted to what I'm doing, I'm not very fun to be around actually. Mm-hmm. Like if someone comes into my personal space when I'm working and I'm thinking of like, even my girlfriend or my daughter and like, hey, and I'm like, I'm just in a different mindset.
Exactly.
I'm like, if they come to me with a question, like, what do you want to have for dinner? I'm in this very masculine solution space, by the way, which is something else I've learned, that men live in solution space. When we're working, we're always just trying to solve every problem. And I'm not speaking necessarily even just about sexes here, but just the masculine energy of solution space versus the feminine energy of emotional connection and talking, and I almost shift too far into that masculine solution mindset at times that I can be abrasive to be around. I'm very disagreeable as well. So I can just, I guess, be a little bit overly focused on work, like harsh to a fault in a way. So I don't know if that's obsessive compulsive per se, but I am just, I can be irritable, frustratable, at my worst, I can have anger problems. So all of these things I'm like trying to look at in myself and, learn when and how to turn them on and off. But it's very difficult, I think, for someone that's naturally predisposed to have kind of these two modes. I can't just like go into the office and work and then walk out to the kitchen and relax and then come back and work. It's like I need to be in one of the two modes. So I've learned to start structuring. Well, I should say I am learning to structure my day around that. It's like I'll have certain days that are fully focused on work, and then I'll take certain days that are fully disconnected.
I think it's important to have people around you that understand you and understand how you're right. Because that's the key. Like my wife, she gets it. When I'm in that mode, I'm in my office. She doesn't even bother me. She just takes the kids. They'll just leave. And then I'll be like, I'll text her like, where'd you guys go? She goes, well, you were on calls. I just figured we'd leave. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like she didn't know I wasn't really, like you just said, like all in. She just assumes it. And then she's like, I don't want to bother him. Let's take the kids and go out to the park or something. And I'm like, no, you didn't have to do that. You could have just knocked on the door. She goes, well, sometimes you snap at me. Like, go away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my bad. I was trying to think,
And it's nothing personal.
No,
it is that mode, tricky to self-manage that, I guess, because your mind is consumed by whatever you're into. And then someone asks you this thing from outside your scope and you're just like, go away. Yeah. You're like, well, you seemed a little snappy. You're like, well, I'm not directing that at you necessarily. Right. I'm just focused on this problem.
It's my own issue. I'm projecting.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you believe in instincts and intuition, or is it like learned through experiences, or is it something that's innate in you that you feel you may have?
Definitely believe in instincts and intuitions. Something that's come up a lot in my work recently is that we have been acting way, way, way longer than we've been thinking and talking about it. We've been animals much longer than we've been humans, I guess is another way to say it.
Right.
So
evolution. Yeah.
You have to find this reconciliation between your mind and your gut and your heart. And I mean, I think this is one of those subtle dances in life, really. But I am a big believer in decision making, that it's not coming purely from your mind, right? You don't want to go into analysis paralysis to try to make every decision. And it also depends on the type of decision, clearly. But yeah, I think to get these three centers of consciousness, which I would just say your mind is like your rational space, your heart is your emotional, intuitive, the heart, I don't know, what do they say? The mind roars and the heart whispers kind of thing. Like you need to get in a very quiet space to hear what your heart even has to say. I would say that's especially important with major life decisions. Like if you're going to choose to go one route or another, you really need to take some time and try to listen to your heart. And then the gut is more of maybe the animal intuition or something like that, right? Where you're getting kind of this immediate feedback of like, this feels right or this doesn't feel right. And it's usually pretty clear, it's not like the heart, again, you don't know, like in a moment, especially of action, I don't think you can actually hear your heart very well. You need to kind of be alone and be quiet and take some time. But the gut usually gives you a good sense, like, yeah, let's look more into this, or no, this doesn't feel right. So just getting a triangulation between those three, I think, is really important.
Let's go back to Bitcoin now. So I want to focus on the Bitcoin. So you previously hedge fund, right? So can you walk me through your career path? Like, so very quickly, hedge fund, and then how did you come to Bitcoin, and how did you decide I'm just going to focus on this solely? Like, this is my life's passion.
Educational background is undergraduate in accounting and finance, and then I got a master's degree in accounting. I was a CPA for a number of years. I was mainly working in entrepreneurial services. So we were crafting tax strategies for high net worth individuals, investment partnerships, things like that. And then I went out on the entrepreneurial path and was a CFO for tech companies mostly, in different sectors. I reached a point in 2016.
By the way, anything successful there, like with options or anything like that when you were working for tech companies? Were there any successful ones?
I had a couple of exits that were good enough. Nothing just stellar, but
Sure.
yeah, it was a really good path for me. I took my first CFO role at the age of 25, so I was like very young to be doing it. Um, and then I had 3 back-to-back roles that were progressively better and more lucrative. So that was all good, but I reached this point actually in 2016. The company I was with at the time was a hospitality technology company. The board had fired the CEO, which actually I was involved with that process, which was an interesting thing to go through. I was functioning as kind of an interim CEO. We were just executing on my plan. I was reporting directly to the board, et cetera, et cetera. But I reached this point where I just decided I wanted to just do my own thing. I didn't even know exactly what that was. And it was right when I made that decision internally. The next day, the board approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you full-time CEO role."
Wow.
And it was just everything you could hope for at this point. How old am I? 30, 31 years old. And they're offering me, board seat, big comp package, bonus options, et cetera, et cetera. And this was one of those times where I actually took some time and tried to listen to my heart and really make the right decision. And I ended up deciding to turn it down and just go start my own thing. I had one consulting client, effectively. It was like a CFO consulting company when I first started. But by giving myself that breathing room and space, I'd already been looking into crypto, but I started to spend more time researching it. And that's when this is, again, late 16, early 17. So I basically started my company at the beginning of 2017. And the market started to explode. Everyone's asking me what's going on. And then I'm like, okay, we have to get into this business. So got into the hedge fund business, initially as a multi-strategy crypto asset fund, and then became much more narrowly focused on Bitcoin.
So what were you particularly doing? So you go to a company and you're saying that we can place and hold, and what exactly, describe the services?
No, so we're a hedge fund. So we had LPs.
How did you do that? Did you bring in a partner that previously had experience doing that?
I had a partner, and we both had networks. So
Okay.
my network brought in about 2/3 of the capital. His network brought in about 1/3, and then we were off to the races.
And what exactly did you do? Like, hedge funds broad. So tell me specifically, like what did you guys, what kind of assets and what did you trade?
Yeah, so initially it was multi-strategy crypto assets. So we're like swing trading,
Okay.
shit coins and Bitcoin. But over time, as my own investment thesis became more narrowly focused on Bitcoin, the portfolio construction reflected that.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the fund, we're focused almost exclusively on trading Bitcoin options. So basically trying to outperform Bitcoin in the options market.
How did you perform? How was the performance of it?
Well, we had underperformance and overperformance
Yeah.
quarter to quarter. But it's really hard to outperform the best performing asset in human history. So my light bulb moment in 2020 was, what am I doing? I'm spending all my blood, sweat, and tears trying to outperform this thing that I could just decide to buy and hold and liberate myself to do anything I want. And all in parallel with this realization, what was my writing and podcasting becoming extremely popular. People, they're messaging me like, "Hey, this thing you wrote or this thing you said changed my life. I want to see more of you. Please write more. Please talk more." So all the while, I'm like developing this deeper appreciation for entrepreneurship. Like, I actually think entrepreneurship is the fundamental basis of civilization in a way. I've said this to Jordan Peterson, like the entrepreneur is the hero myth in lived experience. That's what an entrepreneur is. They're going through the hero's journey, right? And learning and, taking a lot of pain along the way, but learning lessons for themselves and others in the process. So I've really started to develop a deep reverence for entrepreneurship. And so as a result of that, I'm like, okay, I need to listen to the market. What is the market telling me? And so all of this feedback was coming through, and then actually engaging with Saylor, he just came out of the blue one day and sends me this message like, "Hey man, we bought whatever the initial number was, 500 or $1 billion in Bitcoin. Thanks for your work. And I'm like, wow, this is a big deal." And I was having this idea of just talking to smart people for a long time about their journey into the rabbit hole, more or less, right around the time he messaged me. So I'm like, all right, well, hey, I have this idea. Why don't we just talk? And it turns out the guy is just
He's a
I
genius.
mean, if you ever listen to him, he's one of the most
Oh my
brilliant
God.
humans alive.
I've been trying to get him on my show forever. Yeah, he's a genius.
His focus on education, like
Mm-hmm.
that's his legacy. That's where he's pouring all of himself, his efforts, his capital. Sailor Academy is educated. I think the numbers, it's a massive number. I don't even want to quote them, but he's given a lot of people a free education. So all of that, the market's signaling me that it likes my writing and my talking and my education, I guess. Then I've got the sailor thing. And then there's this quote from H.G. Wells that just hit me like a ton of bricks during this whole time. It said, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And like that feels so real and accurate to me right now, that we're worldwide running this huge self-deception process of thinking we can print money to solve problems or legislate, a vaccine that we think that legislation, regulation, coercion, politics can solve problems. And it is simply fundamentally not true. You want to solve problems in the world? Respect the irrefutable truth of self-ownership and its natural extension, private property. This is the actual basis of civilization, and it sorts everything out. So the problem we have is that no one can resist the temptation to corrupt the money and make it non-capitalistic, non-free market. And that is what this recurrent boom and bust cycle of civilization has been centered on. Like the civilizations emerge with hard money, they corrupt the money, breaks down the protocol of trust, civilization becomes unstable and disintegrated and falls apart. Humans pick up the pieces and start over. That's what we've been doing time and time again. And in my view, money is central to that entire dynamic. So now we have something that's really special with Bitcoin. It's a private property that cannot be violated when custodied properly. So it's something even bigger than money in that sense, that we actually have this firm foundation on which to build, on really which to level up civilization. Like, I don't know what happens after this, but it's something on par with the Enlightenment, right? It's like the Enlightenment 2.0.
I always say, like, there's no way we're getting off this planet until we can get to groupthink beehive kind of behavior. And right now, with the incentive structures, the way it's set up, that's just never going to happen currently.
That's right. Yeah. You can look at it that way. The Bitcoin is like a neurotransmitter for the global hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And people have taken issues with that, where they say the hive mind, it should be the cyborg mind because we're not bees, whatever. I just mean that all human action.
We're alignment. Alignment is the key.
Yes, it is concerted, right? It can be directed towards the aims, but not aims arbitrarily selected by political leaders, aims determined by free market actors voting with their buying, spending, and saving patterns. That's how we determine. That's the true democracy. Democracy that we are familiar with here in the US and other states is a fucking scam, frankly. And if you read Mises, he'll tell you that democracy was just intended to reflect what the actual democracy we have in the marketplace. So I look at Bitcoin that way, as the emergence of true economic democracy, and it's disruptive to state coercion.
In preparation for this, I told you I talked to Hodl, and he sent me over a couple things. One of them was your BitBlock boom last year. You spoke about, I think the title was Masters and Slaves of Money. And I just want to read a couple of things you said. Inflation is an infectious disease on society's moral fabric. This is all leading to what we were just talking about. Inflation-resistant money, then, is the antidote to an inflicted social morality, which leads to Bitcoin as the antidote because it's incorruptible money and the most credible scarce asset on the planet. Inflation is a mechanism for time theft. This is the part that I've really resonated with, because I've been saying this for a while, actually. And when I saw your talk, I said, man, this is exactly how I thought about it. I see it as a silent tax, and if it's a silent tax and it's taking your money and it's devaluing it, that's money that you earned. You spent your time on it. They're literally stealing your time. You went through this whole lecture. I think I'll put it in the show notes below, because I really encourage people to watch this talk. It was really put together well, I thought. You said you were confiscating assets every time they print money. They're confiscating assets every time. Why don't you explain what you mean by that? I think I get it, but I want the audience to understand that.
This is a bitter pill to swallow, but if you study the mechanics of the modern financial system, I'll think you'll see that it is true. The US dollar and all fiat currencies are pyramid schemes mechanically. So these are imposed. What is a pyramid scheme? The pyramid scheme is a network marketing scheme where basically new entrants into the scheme are harvested basically to provide economic rewards to earlier entrants. Mm-hmm. So it's this classic, the Ponzi is one that's very familiar, where you need new investors to repay earlier investors. You need to keep cycling, and the whole thing works until you can't get any more new investors. Well, fiat currency is working the same way, but it is harvesting the economic surplus of productive market actors to reallocate it to those that can either print money or receive newly printed money first. This is the well-documented Cantillon effect. Mm-hmm. You could also just call it the redistributive effects of inflation. So if money is just a token that you can go to use and buy stuff, whoever can create that new token and spend it first is robbing everyone else that receives the money later. That's how it works.
This is the pyramid. You have the two pyramids, right? In your talk?
Yes.
I think you show that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the pyramid visualizes there's gold at the top, which everyone's restricted from actual ownership of. Gold was money for thousands of years. The central bank intermediates and it issues dollars, right? It's pumping out these layers of dollars below it. Initially, those dollars were redeemable for gold. Eventually, that was severed, 1971. It's been severed many times throughout history. Mm-hmm. And then by unmooring money from gold, you give the central bank absolute discretion to pump out as many of these tokens as they want and buy as much of your stuff as they want. So it's a currency counterfeiting operation. And this is like a lot to take in, but so a pyramid scheme and a currency counterfeiting operation is at the heart of every modern economy. This is the dominant institution in the world. They're literally picking winners and losers.
Yep.
How much money they print. There's a perpetual profit incentive to their shareholders. And it's basically robbing everyone in broad daylight. So I hope my work helps highlight some of those problems.
It's not okay for you to do it, Bernie Madoff, but it's okay for the government to do it.
That's right. And here's the punchline that people really love is that inflation is legalized counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminalized inflation. They're the same thing. It's just who draws the line, who's taking the monopoly on violence, saying, I get to counterfeit, you don't.
Yep.
So it's an asymmetric, evil enterprise, in my opinion.
I'm going to let you go. I do have more questions. It sucks. Maybe we'll have back on it in the future. But thank you for taking the time to come on the show to learn more about your origin story and why you got into Bitcoin.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Thanks, Robert. Cool.